My name is Elisa Moed, and I'm the founder and CEO of Traveluya.com. We're going to continue our Hebrew scripture reading this week from the book of Leviticus, the second chapter, Tzav, 6, 7, and 8. And Itamar Ben David, our famed tour guide, will be leading this week's discussion. I think you'll find it very interesting. It ties in Passover and Easter, both of which are coming up this week. And actually, to some extent, a little bit about what we're all going through with Corona. I bid you good teaching and a very healthy weekend.
We're going to start with the sacrifice, which is very detailed in this book altogether, and what's its meaning and why is that even needed. So, sacrifice, the word for sacrifice in Hebrew is korban. Korban means to get closer to God. That's the actual meaning in Hebrew. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to get closer to God, and we want to thank Him for creating the world. It says that Adam, shortly after he was created, he sacrificed animals to show his thanks to God. And that's exactly what they did in the temple. They sacrificed from the inanimate objects such as water and salt, from the plants, wheat, barley, and wine. And of course from the livestock, kosher animals such as goats, sheep, and cows, innocent animals that don't have any cruelty, innocent animals that are vegetarian actually. So God created the world, and in a way to thank Him, we elevate some of the world back to Him by burning it on the altar. That's the basic idea, to be thankful for God. Another aspect of the sacrifice is the atonement. So we want to cover the sins. Adam himself wanted to cover his sins. In Christianity, it's called the original sin. And it's not a bribery. It's not like we're trying to say to God, oh, we were bad, have a little bit of grilled meat and then you'll be happy. No, it's not like that at all. The idea is to erase the impression of the sin in the world. So it's a very spiritual work to cover the sin and to erase what happened because of it in the universe, the impression of it in the universe. Having said that, God is not interested in the meat, really. As it says in Psalms, it says, "For you do not desire sacrifice, or else I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offerings. The sacrifice of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise." That's what it says in Psalms 51. So God is interested in our will, actually, and not so much in the meat. He is interested in a moral behavior. This is the basic idea of the atonement. So if we correct our ways, if we actually repent, then He's interested in the sacrifice. About the proper sacrifice, and this is actually mentioned in the Jewish teachings. I read it in English and I saw that there is some mistranslations over there. The proper sacrifice is actually human sacrifice. If you think about it, what is the price for the life that we got? Only the life itself. So in the book of Genesis, when it says that Abraham took Isaac to be slaughtered, it says this, and he said, "Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." Okay, that's pretty explicit. And then it says, "And Abraham said, my son, God will provide for Himself the lamb for a burnt offering." Okay. In English, that's what it says. In Hebrew, it says it in a different way. It says, "God will provide for Himself the lamb, my son." And the commentator said, God will provide Himself a lamb if He wants to, and if not, you are the sacrifice, my son. Okay, so this is actually the way to read it in Hebrew. Also, in the beginning of Leviticus, it says, "When any one of you," this is the second verse, Leviticus chapter 1, verse 2, "When any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock of the herd and of the flock. Okay, so that sounds like, yeah, he's interested in the livestock, but it's not what it says in Hebrew. In Hebrew it says, when any one of you brings an offering from yourselves, okay, mikem, the word in Hebrew is mikem, from yourselves, meaning the actual sacrifice is one of you, okay, but don't do that, just bring one of the animals from the livestock, okay? So the idea of human sacrifice is actually there, but God has no desire in the human sacrifice. Why? Because people are not cows, people are not sheep, people are not goats. We were created in the image of God, and if we would sacrifice ourselves, it means that we're just cows. But as we know, we have a more elevated spirit that a peace from God or a peace from heaven, and therefore there is no need for an actual human sacrifice. In Sufi Islam and in different Eastern philosophies, Asia philosophies, there is an idea to eliminate yourself or immerse yourself in God, and that's how you would unite with Him. Basically, you cancel your own entity. But this is not what the Jewish teachings are talking about. The Jewish teachings are talking about this conversation between God and His creation, and He's interested in our life. Okay, so that's about the atonement. About the two-way street, I would call it, in the temple. It's actually a two-way street. There is some tricky part here. God has no need for, an actual temple. He doesn't really need that. In the book of Kings, Solomon, just when he initiates the temple, he says, "But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain him, cannot contain you. How much less this temple which I have built?" Okay, the same idea will appear in the book of in the book of Psalms. It says, in the book of Isaiah, it says that heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. Where is the house that you will build me? Okay, so he doesn't really need that, but he desires that. Okay, he doesn't need the temple, but he desires it because he wants to be close to his creation. So in Psalms 132, it says, "For the Lord has chosen Zion; he has desired it for his habitation. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, and I have desired it." Okay, so again, Psalms 132. So he desires to be close to his creation and to have a dwelling place for his name, and that's the temple in Jerusalem. As I said, it's a two-way street. If God only gives grace, then in a way we become a spoiled kids, just get and get and get, and doesn't show any thanks, and then we're just disconnected. But if we say thank you through the sacrifice and we elevate something up, then He gives us a lot of grace, and we didn't pay the full price. We didn't pay the full price, which is our life. We just paid some goats, some sheep, some herbs, and some plants, which is allow the world to continue. The essence of the life of the animals are two: the blood, which is the spirit of the animal, and the fat. Some parts of the fat, and definitely the blood, is strictly forbidden in Judaism to eat. Okay, we're not allowed to eat unless it's a kosher butchery. In kosher butcheries, we make sure that all the blood is out of the animal, because this is actually the spirit. So back in the days in the temple, the priest used to take the blood and throw it on the altar, and the fat, which has a lot of calories clearly, and today we live in such a lucky times, I would say. We have so many available calories whenever we want, but back then these fatty parts were the essence of life. I mean, this could really sustain the families, but no, these fatty parts, you have to throw them on the altar. And I think this is a valuable lesson even for our days now, that everyone are closed at home due to the pandemic, that there's some ancient wisdom here that basically says you don't need the fat. Okay, you don't need the fat. You can do just fine even without it. So I think this is a nice takeaway from this reading. Okay, we're getting to the most interesting part, which is the initiation of the tent of meeting and the 8th day. Okay, so there is a very detailed ceremony where Moses washes the priest, Aaron and his sons. One of them is Itamar, the youngest one, myself, the same name. And then he puts them in quarantine. Okay, he washes them. There is like a whole process, and then he puts them in quarantine for 7 days. They're not allowed to step out of the tent of meeting. So these 7 days are supposed to be the equivalent for the 7 days of creation. God created the world in 7 days, and you will stay in the tent of meeting for 7 days. Only in the 8th day you will step out, and then you'll be in a total different world, even, I would say. The 8th day in Judaism is what would be called in Christianity the kingdom of heaven or the afterlife. Okay, the 8th day is something more elevated. How do we know that? We know that because in the book of Genesis, they describe the creation, the first chapter, and every day ends like that. So the evening and the morning were the first day, and then so the evening and the morning were the second day, and so on and so forth, the third, fourth, and fifth day, and sixth day, and then it doesn't say the same thing about the seventh day. There is no verse that says so the evening and the morning were the seventh day. So we basically live now, our history now is the seventh day for God. Once we're over with the seventh day, we'll step to the next phase, much closer to God, to the 8th day. So the 8th day, as I said, is the same concept like the kingdom of heaven, the afterlife, something more spiritual and elevated. It's very interesting that the Holy Week and is basically designed in the way of the initiation of the tent of meeting. How come? Jesus stepped into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, Sunday, and he raised from the dead on Easter Sunday, 8 days later. Okay, it's not a coincidence. Within that week, he also, just like Moses washed the priests, so does Jesus washes the disciples, the washing of the feet, and then on the 8th day he appears to them. Okay, in the Gospel by John, he actually appears to them on the 8th day. So basically, that's how they entered the kingdom of heaven after he covered the sins by his death and resurrection. So that's the 8th day. Also, it's very explicit in the Gospel by John. It says that and after 8 days, Gospel by John, I'm reading from chapter 20, verse 26, and after 8 days, his disciples were again inside the room of the Last Supper, and Thomas, that's doubting Thomas, with them. Okay, so he appears to them on the 8th day, Easter Sunday, and then because Thomas was not there, he wants to make sure that Thomas is also one of the disciples, so he waits another 8 days, and then he appears to them again. So it's right there. Okay, the idea of the 8th day. So here we go. We understood the sacrifice in the Jewish teaching, and we understood the meaning of the 8th day. And I wish all of you happy holidays and stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.